Welcome back to the Working Audio Tools podcast, the home to all things mixing on YouTube and your favorite streaming platforms. This week, we are going to be talking about our experiences at the one and only Gearfest UK at Tileyard in King's Cross over the weekend just gone. Paul and I attended with some good friends, met loads of people, heard some incredible speakers, and there's a lot to unpack and talk about. But first, this episode is sponsored by Baby Audio and their brand new plugin Humanoid, the vocal tuner on steroids. The extreme hard tuning capability enables you to morph your vocals into synth waveforms, turning any voice into a synthesizer. Layer harmonies and create chords with Humanoid's advanced retuning engine, and roboticize any vocal with over 180 professionally sound-designed presets. Go to babyaudio.io to learn more and get 15% off any order with the code WHAT15 at checkout. Link in the description below. Now, before we get on to Gearfest, I feel like there's one or two things to unpack from last week's episode. I have a couple of things I'd like to just vocalize on this. One is thank you to the people who pointed out that the pianos were 180 degrees out of phase. I was reading these comments thinking that's not possible. Who records a piano 180 degrees out of phase? Then I was running through the plugins thinking, ooh, I did try a new one. Maybe it was that. It wasn't that. And I tried a few things, and it actually turned out that the stereo recording of the piano part was 180 degrees out of phase. I found this out by splitting the stereo file into mono in Pro Tools, flipping the phase on one channel, and shigga-da-boom, it was in phase. And everyone was right saying, yes, it was too loud, because when it was in phase, it was noticeably too loud. I tried the LFE thing, removing the sub, because maybe that was causing some extra energy in the mix that I wasn't getting in my room, because the low end was split between the speakers and the sub. And when that was then, the idea was that when that was then bounced to just stereo and then played on stereo speakers without the LFE channel, it was overbearing. That also wasn't the case. I just had too much bass in the mix. So I redid the mix, I rebalanced the levels, took off a little bit of top end that one or two people found offensive. I didn't think it was offensive, but I kind of knew what they meant. And that version is going to be live on my website by the time this podcast comes out, if anyone would like to hear the revised mix. I've also done an analog master of it for the first time, Paul. So far, I've been mastering purely with plugins and had a little rejig inspired by Gearfest of the 500 series and basically utilized the Wes Audio gear and discovered that the Wes Audio Raya, which is a very Mu style tube compressor, sounds really fucking good on masters. And then I went a little bit too far with the Rupert Neve 542s just to soften the song and give it a bit of a warm vibe. So that's my update. Those versions, the new mix and the master, will be available on my website at dawn.com for anyone who's interested. On top of that, the other thing I really want to request is when you're giving mix feedback, I think it's going to be really helpful for Paul and I if you can tell us what you're listening on, so we can get an idea of whether it's a headphone issue or a speaker issue, whether it's a near-field speaker, main speaker. Any kind of translation help that you can give us would be massively appreciated if you could all list what your comment is. Please keep giving the comments, but also tell us what you're listening on, just so we can pay particular detail to how things are translating and not translating. What were your thoughts on the feedback on last week's mix, Paul?
A part of me was just thinking, like, do I still want to be doing these comparisons? Because I don't know, it's the inconsistency that kills me, where one person will say, yeah, it's great, it's very close to Mark Daniel Nelson's, yeah, it's great. Then somebody else will be like, nah, the vocals are too harsh. Then I'll say, Edge is too thin, but Paul's is fine. Now, Paul's is too thin, but Edge is fine. And it's, I don't know, it's just a cacophony of fucking, confusing comments that don't really all tie together. The only thing that I felt was commonly agreed on was the fucking phase and the piano. That was the only thing that people seemed to agree on.
Yeah, if one person says something, I'm inclined to think about it and consider it. But when 3, 4, or 5, or I think 6 people said something, I was like, okay, there's a problem I've missed here. Hence, I spent today looking into that.
One thing that, because I'm going to go back to it as well, because it was our first mixes at this, was in the vocal, I could hear there was a bit of transient in the vocal with like the compression and stuff like that. So it was kind of your but I always remember Spike Stent talking about the diction in vocals and how that helps to make a vocal sound very clear. So in the Ananda Nanos, it was like raging. Because I knew it was there, but a part of me thought, right, I'm going to leave it in and I'm going to see what the audience say. So the one thing that did seem to be quite consistent was that I think a few people thought my vocals were maybe on the harsh side, and somebody said maybe like shave off some transients. So I know how to do it. I know how to fix it. It'll probably be a spiff job. But yeah, it was interesting how I kind of took Spike Stent's comments on diction, and he gets diction by heavily compressing things. So I wonder if I've maybe got the term diction maybe confused with like transients and stuff like that. What would you see that as, Ed? If somebody said to you that I'm over compression for diction.
So diction to me is the emphasis of syllables, really enunciating your T's and D's and solid, tight sounds like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, rather than speaking a little bit Scottish and talking about your altar and ilfrields and like, you know.
What a prick. What a prick. Was that enough enunciation for you? Is that enough diction?
Good diction now, the r and the k. I like it. So that's to me what it is, and it's found kind of, you know, 2 to 5K region. I guess higher, but then you get into the real harsh sibilants potentially. And dictions, if you've got too much of it, spectral dynamic EQ can be your good friend.
Or split EQ. I'm two ways. I'm thinking spiff or I'm thinking split EQ, and just like find the kind of spitty transient parts of the vocal and then just kind of bring those down with a transient or spiff.
Or Sonable Smart DS.
Yeah, because you've got the plosive part as well. But then, no, I wouldn't do that because that's wideband. So that might be taking out piz and biz and stuff. Where I think what I need to do is I know the bits because the Ananda Nanos were like screaming at me, you know, when I could hear them. And I can still hear them a little bit in, like on mobiles and stuff. But I just wanted to see what the audience said because I was just a bit unsure of what diction was. Maybe I had a little bit too much diction in it, which the Ananda Nanos were telling me. So yeah, I know how to fix it. Now, some people I know put a bit of saturation on vocals to do that, so it kind of shaves off some of the transients and smooths things out. Or some people I'll put a limiter on it and stuff like that. But yeah, I could even use a high frequency limiter if I really wanted to. There's loads of ways of doing it. But yeah,
or tape.
Yeah. So that's the only thing. And the only other thing, which I'm trying not to be smarmy about it because I'm a little shit and everybody knows it. Everybody was saying our mixes were maybe sounded thin compared to the Mark Daniel Nelson mix that we showcased at the very start. Now, what I didn't know until the very end was that there is a released mix, and I downloaded it for 79 pence. Yes, Paul Third actually bought something. I know.
Baller,
I know.
baller.
Tell me about it. Yeah, my wallet's still crying, but. And I downloaded it, and when I was A/Bing between Mark's original mix, well, the mix that he included in the multi-tracks in the released version, he took out a lot of the low mids that were in the first track, and it was definitely brighter. And I'm going to go back to the mix, and I'm going to then A/B with the released version because the released version is the most important. So I don't know if it was just a quick mix Mark did for Produce Like a Pro. Or again, it was an early mix. I don't know. But it was just interesting to me how many people were like, yeah, that's the Mark Daniel Nelson sound, and you've thinned it out too much. So, yeah, it's just quite interesting to me how, you know, the original mix, many people seem to like with the low mids in, but then obviously the released version was more what me and Ed see as a pop sound, where you do take those low mids out. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of an episode on that. We're going to compare the original... Well, I'd say the mix that we had in the multi-tracks, and then we're going to listen to Mark's released version, and then we're going to kind of just have a bit of a chat about low mids, because I think it's maybe something that it would be quite a good discussion because many people are on the fence about it. Some people, like me and Ed, see pop music. Maybe some people would say scooped, but I always, especially Serbian mixes, you never really hear mud in a lot of Serbian mixes. Again, I was listening to Meghan Trainor's new album, phenomenal, like one of the best pop sounding records I've heard in a while, and there's no mud in that whatsoever. But many people say that, you know, that's where a lot of the warmth is, even though I hate that word, but again, a lot of people say it's where the feel is. So yeah, I think it'd be quite an interesting experiment and just to kind of really dive deep on it, because it's important for all of us. If you're going to be mixing for clients and we maybe want to get label work in the future, we have to meet the standards. So it'd be a good conversation to maybe look into and maybe look at some other records and reference other records to just kind of see that kind of maybe, I mean, what would you say, Ed, is kind of what we normally take out? 300, 400, 500? Say between 300 and 500? That's maybe like the region that we normally kind of maybe tend to take out.
It depends what it is, obviously, but I would say that the troublesome low-mid frequencies are anything from 150 up to, I mean, arguably you could say that's low end, I guess.
I would.
But those kind of, the mud for me is 150 to about 400. Again, that is debatable. Like, if you remember, it took us quite a long time to identify that by mid-range, you meant 1 to 5 or 6K. And I was like, oh yeah, he means like 500 to 1K. And then I was like, what? He wants more of that? So yeah, we should identify some terminology at the start of that episode. But we'll talk about that next week because that is a good subject. I totally agree. You're right about that. And I have some observations about modern tracks that I think we could possibly adhere more to than we do at the moment. The Working Audio Tools podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at DistroKid for all of your musical distribution needs. Don't forget, you can't just upload your songs to Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, or Tidal. You have to go through a music distribution service. There are many out there, but DistroKid is the one that Paul and myself use. They don't take any of your royalties. You keep 100% of the streaming revenue that you earn. For just $1.92 a month or $22.99 a year, you can upload unlimited songs. Your lyrics can be found in Google and other places. You get the blue Spotify verified checkmark, and you can create royalty splits between yourselves and fellow contributors. You also get access to the new DistroKid iPhone app for editing and uploading songs and accessing your statistics on the move. There are plenty of other tools available on DistroKid. We'll go through those in another section. But moving on to Gearfest UK. Gearfest is basically, if you haven't been, it was in its third year. They did 1 day on the first year, 2 days last year, and then they shrunk it to 1 day this year. Now, 1 day I think was enough, relatively, given it's not very big. But it's basically dubbed as the UK's version of the NAMM show on a much smaller scale. And a much less fatiguing and sensory overload scale because NAMM is holy. There's nothing quite like it. If you've been, you'll know what we're talking about. But it's basically a place where all the UK distributors and some of the major brands can come showcase their products and their newbies, and people can go down and test stuff. Now, Paul and I basically went this time with the idea that we wanted to hear as many sets of speakers as possible, and we went around with our good friend Andrish, who came down from the Lake District. He was onto the speakers as well, and my friend Piero, he's just upgraded his speakers, so wanted to hear some, three-ways and bigger systems and so on. So we basically aimed to go around all the speaker brands, and did we have fun, Paul?
Yes, it was fun.
What stood out for you about all the speakers we heard?
When we do say this, we have to be honest. The rooms in Tile Yard were pretty shit. Okay, they weren't properly treated or anything
Shots
like
fired.
that. Yeah, we're just going to put it out there because we'll have to. Because when we give opinions, we do have to kind of watch what we're saying because it is a little bit cruel to basically judge.
Well, hang on. Let me caveat that. Not all of them do. So, for example, the first stop off
I know what you're about to
was
say.
the PMC room, which is apparently £100,000
beautiful,
acoustically treated. This is just the acoustic treatment. There was then another about £150,000 worth of brand new PMC immersive speaker systems, and holy shit!
You need to experience.
I have never heard transients punch like that system.
Yep.
Incredible.
I know, mental. The low end is the best low end I have ever heard on any speaker. And see, after the PMC room,
I've always said it. PMC has the best low end.
we couldn't hear it, and I just was like, oh, I want my low end. It's still, know what it is. Not only is it tight, but it's big and juicy and expansive, and it covers everything. And it just, some of the tracks. I remember even they were listening to hip hop tracks and massive 808s, and no matter how big the bass was, and no matter how loud the 808s was, the room just soaked it in, and the speakers were just like, you want bass, both have that. But transients and everything. I've said it when we went to Just for the Record. It was the first time I was blown away by speakers, and anything will sound good, which is interesting for me because it's something we were all talking about. Was as great as PMCs do sound, and they're my favourite speakers. Like if I was to choose speakers to listen on, it would be the PMCs, the really expensive ones. I've not heard the PMC 6s or anything like that.
Even the 6s are still to this day one of my favourite speakers.
Right, okay.
Speakers.
Yeah, and I'm talking like the the subs. You're talking like it's like 4 stacks of, was it 8 woofers? Because it's like 2, 2, and 2, isn't it? If I recall.
Yeah, the XBD system was 4 aside.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But my thing is, if it does make everything sound good, then is it revealing? Like, are you just going to be like, oh my God, yeah, this is great. It's having so much fun mixing. And then you try to be critical, but it's just everything just sounds amazing. Does it? Again, is it going to translate to other systems? That's my only thing. So I've not mixed on them.
And that was something I discussed in my speaker search video, and that was one of the main reasons I actually didn't go for them. And I think I said this to Phil. A shout out to Phil at PMC. Thanks for the t-shirt, by the way, which I'm now wearing in this video.
Swag.
And for the mug and for the beer. PMC make really good beer. Who'd have thought it? But yeah, they are very flattering speakers, and as a result, I don't know if I would want to mix on them personally.
Mm.
Moving on from that, though, I think we peaked.
We did.
I think we peaked early at Gearfest this year, and all of us were like, right, okay. We then went into a room by a company called Alcons, who are a relatively small company. They dabble with live sound speaker arrays, and they're making a name for themselves in the home cinema, home theatre arena. And they're about to break into the studio world. I believe they're launching later this year in September or October. They were at Gearfest last year with a prototype. This year they then had the working type, the model for sale. And they've basically spent a year just developing and further developing the speakers and the amplifiers. So they're not putting them out without having any issues. And we went in and heard them, and all of us were in agreement that we'd never heard anything like it.
Correct.
Now, PSI were also at Gearfest in one of the best sounding rooms for 2 reasons. Paul from Emerging had Trinov set up, and he had the AVA, the AVAA low-end dissipation systems, whatever you call them. And they worked wonders, and the speakers in the room sounded ridiculous. But I have to say, Alcons are just in a league of their own from anything I think I've heard speaker-wise so far. What did you think?
I've never heard speakers that give me such an expansive soundstage. Now, they had 2 different speakers. They had 3 ways. What we listened to first were on 5-inch 2-ways. And my God, these 5-inch 2-ways, when I say stereo image, I mean left is here, right is here, and the rest of it is like this. I'm talking, you are getting the full image, top, left, right, and they're as clean as any speaker I have ever heard. When we are talking neutral and clean, I've never heard speakers that flat and that clean. And you add that in with the image, I just personally think that my gut was telling me, Paul, we would definitely be able to mix on this. Like, we would definitely be able to utilise the panning, and again, it's really flat and neutral, and it would be very revealing. Obviously, you need to mix on it, but the fact that all of us were in the room, nobody kind of really said anything. And then I think I'd made the comment of, wow, it's there, like left is here and right is here. And then as soon as I said that, everybody was just like, yeah, this is unbelievable. Like, unbelievable. And then after that, it was just difficult for me to appreciate kind of other speakers because I could hear the colour of them. I could hear the sound of these speakers. I just feel like the Alcons they don't, I suppose their sound would be the sound stage, but the actual sound of them, no, when you just know you're listening to really neutral, like, not Neumanns, because I heard the Neumanns, and I heard, I'm always scared to talk about Neumann because you get so much shit. It's like Neumann has a cult online and they're fucking nutters. But I was listening to the Neumanns. I'm going to say it. What a muddy mess. Oh my days. Okay, the room wasn't good, but I heard the same thing I heard when Ed had them, the 120s in his room. And yeah, they just sounded muddy. Again, they have that neutral sound, but it's like that boring, blech, like, and muddy, and then the Atmos room. And the issue was with all the Atmos setups, bar the PMC, was that they were all trying to do Atmos with untreated rooms. So Focal, they had a room, that was the first one we tried. It was just an untreated room, and the whole experience was really, really smeary. So it was really difficult to hear an Atmos record correctly, because I know how Atmos should sound, because I've got a belting room through there, like it's treated to the hilt. Ed's still pissed off how flat I got that room. And so I know
unbelievable.
So I know what it should sound like. And yeah, you need a properly treated room because there's too many reflections and everything just sounds fucking smeary.
There's too much information from too many sources with too many follow-on reflections. I didn't understand why so many rooms were untreated. Now, I get the concept of we don't want to have DSP and additional stages of conversion in between the audio source and our speakers and therefore the listeners, but there's no perfect room except maybe the first PMC room we went into, which apparently is $4,000 a month to rent. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I heard. But apparently you can rent it for half a day for £150 a session, which I might consider just for a bit of a laugh.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. That's a decent price.
But I believe that you need to put your best representation of your brand forward, and if that involves bringing in additional acoustic treatment or treating the room with Trinov, I mean, immediately you heard how much better the PSI room sounded than everything else. Why not? For me, I can't comprehend why you wouldn't put your speakers in the best operating window possible, which I think might be a good tangent to take us to what can only be described as the disappointment of the day.
Yeah, I know what you're about to say.
Now, I'm going to caveat this by saying I think it would be worthwhile hearing these speakers in a different place.
I agree.
In a more optimized setting. This is the brand that I didn't include in my speaker search video, and everyone shouted at me, "Oh, they're the best speakers out there." I can't remember why. I think they were just over budget, because I think they're $13,000 a pair, so that was over my 10K budget, which I then smashed anyway with the subwoofer now. So we heard the Key 7s first, and I sat down, and I've never stood up so quickly from listening to a speaker.
Yeah, no, that was quick.
I hated them. The top end was harsh. The hi-hats were really, really piercing. And in a way that, like if you know Genelec speakers, they kind of DS at about 6K. They DS themselves like 6 to 8K. It's really freaking weird. Well, these were doing the opposite. Imagine like a really sharp vocal, but without the de-essing. That's what you were getting. It was piercing. And then we had the Key 3s on with the BXT or whatever it is system. And the cardioid subsystem, I don't know whether it was the room was too small or what it is. Apparently it only works between quite a higher frequency range between like 80 and a couple of hundred hertz. I think 400 hertz, maybe someone said. Again, don't quote me on that, but it's not operating in the low end where you'd think this huge stack of speakers facing in all directions would be working. And I was massively disappointed overall. Now, my friend Matteo swears by them. He's worked in a couple of studios with them. But again, just why not acoustically treat or room correct the room? You're putting 13 grand speakers in plus the subsystem. What, a 25, 30 grand speaker system?
Yep.
Why not optimize it? Because you've just got two YouTubers who've gone away and saying on a podcast, no, your speakers aren't great.
Yeah.
Great, well done. What have you succeeded there?
I know, I agree. Because for me, the cardioid bass thing just wasn't working for me. Again, I think the Key 7s they're these new wireless speakers that they've released, and I was just like, no, the bass was. I got like this kind of cardioid bass thing but they're kind of like trying to sound like headphones a little bit, whereas like the bass is right there, but it just sounded unnatural to me. Like it didn't sound as natural as headphones, and yeah, it just sounded like the bass took a lot of priority. Like it was unnaturally too much in my periphery. And then we'll listen to obviously the Key 3s. And yeah, I was just sitting on the couch, so a sweet spot was further for the 7s, and then the couch at the back. I don't know, I didn't vibe with them, but what I find interesting is that there's people that do vibe with them. And again, this is one thing that we all agreed on, is that it's amazing how we all hear speakers differently, and we all have a different perception on what would make us, achieve a stronger mix. For me, and this is what I love about this, because me and Ed definitely hear things differently, which I think makes for the podcast better. Like, I was in the PSI room and I've heard Ed's PSIs. I know now I would never mix on PSIs. I just know they're not for me. And then just because they're not for me doesn't mean that they're shit speakers. They're not. It's just that my preference in that crystal clear top end. See, the thing is with the PSIs, you will never get better top end than the PSIs. If you want top clear, not harsh, detailed top end, really sparkly and really nice and really detailed without sounding harsh, then,
and airy and expansive.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. But the thing is, they're the only speaker that I've ever heard that on in my puff, which tells me that I would struggle.
Aren't in your what?
In my puff. It's a Scottish term. And I just made it up, probably, knowing me. I've heard that before. Don't know what it even means. But in my life...
It's in train spotting, everyone.
Probably. In my life, I've never heard that much detail in the top end, which tells me that I think you would maybe mix the top end differently compared to other speakers. And the low end was lacking for me. Again, going from the PMCs with that low end. And then, I don't know, even in your room, I just do feel like the lows are something that I think you would fight with. I think you have to fight to get the low end working right with PSIs. The mid range, great. They're great sounding speakers, 100%. It's what I found when we went to Present Day Productions studio. We did that on the Sunday. Thank you again, James and Mark, very hospitable hosts. What I loved about the mums was that I felt that the tweeter was almost invisible, where I couldn't hear that the top end had a crossover. Like, I could tell that, there wasn't really a normal three-way where you have, again, your tweeter, your mid-range, and your low driver. I just felt like there was this seamless...
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And what they've nailed on the DSP on those speakers is the mid-range, the upper mid-range, and the top end.
Yeah.
Is so cohesive.
Unbelievably cohesive.
It's really, really beautifully done. I know what you mean about the PSIs, and the theory there is that where they are a bit forward is at the crossover point, which I think is 3.2 kilohertz, 3.6 maybe, can't remember. And usually at crossover points you get you can get an overlap and a build-up of output, which I think because they're all analog, they've got nothing to control that. So Trin off to the rescue.
Yeah. So, but again, I'm not saying that PSIs don't sound great. They do. If you ever go into Ed's room, you'll be like, yeah, these sound great. It's just that the preference that I have is I want better low end, and I want the top end to be dulled. I just want to have a more of a neutral top end. Ed likes to have the detailed, sparkly, airy top end. It's something that I don't really want, because I don't really think any other speaker has it. So I think it would kind of affect my decision making. The PSIs were definitely, in terms of all the speakers that I heard there, I would say that PSIs were probably third. I would say I would go Alcon, PMC, and then the PSIs. Now, we did get a chance to listen to the Ex Machinas, which Ed has talked about a lot on the channel, because he did really like them. And I know he was considering for a little while investing in them. Now, unfortunately, the rooms that they were in weren't ideal. So the first one that I listened to them in was the SX Pro booth. Again, thank you to Dale again for sitting down with us and going through a lot of things. And also, again, everybody that we met at the SX Pro, they were just really, really friendly. Unfortunately, it was too loud a room. It was very open and there was other things going on. So you were kind of trying to hear the speakers, even though you were close to them, within all the chatter. And, you know, it was on basically a stage, which wasn't great. And then the dangerous room, it was not just how dangerous, the dangerous gear in it. It wasn't like there was a guy behind the door, like, going at your peril. And there's nothing dangerous about it, just the gear.
Oh no, Marek dresses dangerously.
Yes,
sure,
very true.
so,
He does, yeah. He's a character.
But yeah, the speakers in that room were just in the middle of the room, and not even, but off center slightly, with rack gear on one side and space behind and to the other side. They weren't positioned remotely optimally, and I just thought, why represent 10 grand speakers in a suboptimal location?
I think for the place they were in, I was like, wow, these are doing decent for the place that they're in. But it was very hard to judge them. And in the dangerous room, I don't know, I was pretty underwhelmed. I was just like, yeah, these just sound like good speakers. I wasn't like, wow, these are like 12 grand or whatever. I was just like, they're speakers. They're good speakers.
But, and this is where went into the next room, which was the Amphion room, where Andrish was, cream in his puff. He was in love with them after hearing them in my studio on the Friday. And what I would say about the Amphions is, I guess the Ex Machinas are a little bit more pleasing, but the Amphions are definitely not impressive.
Oh, no.
That's not the point of them.
I know.
Same as the Neumanns, they're not impressive. I mean, the Neumanns have their problems, where the Amphions don't have problems, in my opinion. I just think they're great speakers with a slightly softened top end that make them a good partner to the PSIs. But they're not impressive, but it's very... My overall thoughts leaving Gearfest this year, primarily for everyone else who hasn't listened to as many speakers as I've been fortunate enough to, is it's one thing listening to well-mixed, well-mastered, pre-recorded music. It is a whole nother thing mixing on them.
Yeah, true.
And that was why I was so fortunate with my video in that I had speakers in for, usually at least a day, sometimes a couple of days, in some cases a couple of weeks. So I could spend time mixing on them and really get to know what they're like. And I think that, annoyingly, is the only way really to get to know a speaker and how it translates and, what you're going to get out of it, what you need out of it. And even then with the translation, you got to get used to the speakers before you got a chance of them translating. I mean, I'm 9 months into having the PSIs, 10 months maybe, and I'm still working on the translation. Hence, I got the Amphions.
It was annoying because the Amphion room was the smallest and it was genuinely a cupboard. Like, I'm genuinely telling you, it was like probably smaller than most people's cupboards. So the speakers were like, I mean, the what was it? What was it? The 115s that was in there, or the two? I can't remember.
Yeah, the 118s, which is the size above mine, my 115s, and the new 125s, which are huge
and way too big for that room.
Tanks of speakers. I mean, they look like they want wheels on a little turret sticking out of them.
Yeah, they were just too big for that room. That's why everybody in the room preferred the 118s. What struck me was that I didn't enjoy listening to them. What I found interesting about them was that they sounded like right slap bang in between a great speaker and a shit speaker. It was like they had things that were like shitty about them, but they also had things that were...
Stop flirting, Paul. Come
but
on.
Honestly, there was like, they had things that were shitty about them, but they had things that were good about them. And I was like, is that why everybody talks about translation? Because they've got a bit of shit in them, but they've also got a bit of greatness in them. At the mid-range, you could get through the shit, you can get through the mid-range, and it's got really good mid-range. But it could have easily been the room, but again, I don't know, because I've heard the massive ones in MSMs, and I was really impressed. Like when he was switching from the Neumanns to those, I was like, yeah, the mid-range detail is way better in these. And I enjoyed them. So again, I don't know if it's just the room, and the room was that shit, and we were so close to the speakers that I just was like, I'm just not enjoying it. I personally couldn't feel I could mix on them in that room.
No, not in that room. I think they are designed for bigger rooms than that. In that room, really, they wanted the 112s.
Yeah,
the small
correct.
ones that would have been tighter and less low end for closer listening distances. I mean, to me, they sound like the Amphion range that I know from mine and MSMs. I know that across the board, they deliver enough detail. They highlight the flaws in a mix enough without you needing to go into super amounts of detail like I do on the PSIs. They highlight too much, if I'm honest. They just offer a very neutral perspective. I think Amphions are the modern day NS10s. Apparently, initially they were a hi-fi system that then were adopted in studios for that exact reason. Do they translate to hi-fi systems that are on sale? And other systems of the day, you still had vinyl going around, so you didn't have much low end, and consumer headphones weren't great, so they didn't have much top end. Now we're at a time when we have loads of top end, so we need to be wary of it, and loads of low end, and we need to be wary of that. And I feel like these speakers really translate to all those devices. I feel also the Amphions are a better version of why the Neumanns are popular, because they don't have that low forwardness and they don't have the harmonic distortion above 5K that just make them sound fizzy. But they've got the detail and they've got the transient response. Okay, they're not PMC sharp, but they're not, sluggish. And again, if you can make a mix sound exciting on them, like the Neumanns, and this is why Spike uses Neumanns, if you can make a mix sound exciting on them, the mix is going to translate as exciting. But I just think they're a better listening environment than NS10s by a long way, obviously, and the Neumanns. So, yeah, I think I won't be surprised if in 5 years' time, every studio has a set of them. They're just going to be the next 10, 15 years studio standard speaker.
No, I agree. I would say that a modern day NS10 is probably a very, very good shout for them, because the top end isn't harsh and the mid range is still pokes through. It was just, I don't know if it was like a graininess to them that I didn't like, or there was just something, but I wasn't feeling it. I just wasn't feeling it. And again, that when we were on the van drive back from Present Day Productions. That's what I love about dealing with people and not the fucking internet. See, when you deal with people, it's like me and Andrish were able to sit there, and I was like, they weren't for me. I couldn't get out of that room fast enough. I just wasn't gelling with them. But he was like, these are the ones. These are the ones. Like, I couldn't stop speaking about them, couldn't stop thinking about them. But again, we were able to sit there, and I knew it was like, yeah, they'll be right for you, because whatever they're telling you is exactly what you are wanting to hear. They're right for you. In the same way that the PSIs are right for Ed. I don't know. I don't think I've found mine.
Well, hang on. You've said something very interesting there. What they're producing is what you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not why I chose the PSIs. Because if I was choosing what I wanted to hear, I'd have gone
PMC.
Probably PMC or Ex Machina. If I was choosing what was revealing and detailed and was going to make me work to make the mixers sound good, that's why I chose the PSIs. Like, I know that the low end on them is not as great as the Ex Machinas and PMCs for sure. But I wanted that, so I have to work to get the low end.
Well, see,
right.
The thing that put me off the Amphions, now I'm annoyed that I didn't get to hear them in your room because I was too late on the Friday. I think that because we were listening to records that have already been done, I was just like, these aren't sounding great to me. And I'm just like, I know that these records are done really well because I've listened to them on other systems. And I was like, I'm not liking them. I'm not liking records on these. So for me, I just don't think whatever it is that I hear, I think I probably make a fucking mess on Amphions, and I try and make them sound a certain way. But I do genuinely believe that we all as humans hear differently. Our cochlears are different. Again, like everything is different. And I do genuinely believe that we all can get to the results that we need to do to get the work and keep on getting the work and keep the clients happy. But you need to find a monitoring system that allows you to hear whatever that is. And for me, the Amphions weren't that. But I'm not going to sit here and say, no, the Amphions are just super, super shit. Because again, I bumped into, a new YouTuber. I can't remember, his name's Alex, and he's doing a bit of produce like a pro just now. And I know he works on Amphions, and I spoke to him about it. And he was like, so what is it about the Amphions? And he's like, yeah, they just really translate. So It wasn't my cup of tea, but just because it's not my cup of tea doesn't mean that it's not somebody else's cup of tea. And that's what's very, very important to learn about speakers. And I've learned that especially this weekend, is that speakers and monitoring is so unbelievably personal. It's so personal. And it's a bit like Goldilocks. You've just got to try many things until you know what it is that's going to get you from A to B. And I don't know, I think I've not found mine yet. I think the Alcons are the ones. Those are the ones, my brain is telling me the Alcons are the ones that we want. Whether they actually translate when you try and actually mix on them, that's a different thing. But my head is telling me the Alcons are my speakers because they're the ones that I'm like, yes.
Yeah, because again, although they were so impressive to hear, they may not translate when mixing. And you won't know that until you've had them in the room for a couple of weeks. So hopefully both of us will get a set from Lawrence to demo for the channels at some point, as and when they launch. We'll keep you updated on that. Anyone in London, I will encourage to come round to my studio and have a listen. The Working Audio Tools podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at DistroKid for all of your musical distribution needs. For a little bit more, $39.99 a month, you can have 2 artists on your roster, which includes everything just mentioned. Additionally, synced lyrics in Apple Music, further streaming analytics statistics. You can create a customizable record name. Mine, for example, is Ed Thorne Rhythm and Records. And you can customize release dates, pre-order dates, iTunes pricing, and again, much more. Now, if you're an artist manager or a record label, the Ultimate Bundle gives you up to 100 artists for just $89.99 a year. And you get 1 terabyte of instant file sharing, which is useful, but also contact information for thousands of playlist curators on Spotify. This is really useful so you can pitch your artist music to playlist curators around the world. Only available in the Ultimate Bundle from DistroKid. So speakers was a big theme of the day, of course, and there were 1 or 2 other standout bits of gear for me. But I just wanted to touch on just how cool the whole event was.
Yeah, it was great.
Made for, by the people.
Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Everyone was cool. Everyone knew everyone. A lot of people came up to us and said hello, and a few of you said hello. Thank you for the podcast, which was lovely feedback. Thank you for that. And it was just a whole bunch of good people talking about good stuff, positive stuff. There wasn't a negative vibe in the room.
Not one negative vibe.
Anywhere.
I know.
Even at the drinks after we'd had a few bevies after. It was just people helping each other out, giving people advice, asking questions, introducing people, meeting new people, making connections. And yeah, man, that's what these things are about for me. 100%. I mean, I obviously went last year and completed it, so I didn't really feel like I needed to swan up on all the gear that was there. But yeah, it was people and networking. So if you didn't make it, you massively missed out.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
And you really need to make an effort to come next year. And do you know what, Paul? It even crossed my mind. We should have a stall next year.
Oh, for God's sake. What would we offer to people? Jesus. Come listen to me and Ed fighting about our mixes. Come, you can tell us how shit our mixes are.
No, we're not going to do we could do a live podcast session in the tent that they've got. I mean, I guess, we might be small fry compared to some of the people they had talking there. But it was just an idea I thought I'd float. Anyway, I know what you think about it, so I'll be doing that on my own.
Thornhub. No, I really, really enjoyed it, and I will definitely go next year. And I'll keep on going until I stop, until I think it's shit. Because there is times that, I know people that went to NAMM years and years, and then they're just like, yeah, it's just like, stopped going because it wasn't really for them anymore. Sometimes you get bored, sometimes you see the same things. But Ed's absolutely right. The people are what makes it. And I also want to thank Chris from Audient. Now, I got on really well with Chris and Andy at Audient. Again, we bumped into Andy and reminded him that he did actually carry my speakers when we were in LA. He denies it, but you did, Andy. If you're watching this, you did. But Chris introduced me to Chris from Odyssey. Now, we all know I'm a big headphone man, and I do really, really like Ed's closed backs. I really, really like them. But they weigh a ton and you need a neck brace to use them. So I was speaking to him and I was like, look, this is, and Chris was doing a stellar job and bigging me up and being like, look, Paul's great, blah, 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 blah. That's why, again, we always work with Paul. And we got speaking, and I told him about the headphone stuff that I've done. I obviously mentioned the HE 1000 SEs, which are big competitors. And yes, I have had it confirmed this week. I think it was yesterday. They're sending me the MX4s, which is like cha-ching. Because Ed's heard the Odyssey MX4s in MSM Studio, and he said to me they were the best balance of all the headphones that he's heard. So
now I spoke to Chris as well, and he didn't offer me the headphones, but I'm hoping we can sort that out. And he said as well they're his favourite headphone.
So, and I have heard many people talk about them for mixing, that they are really, really good for mixing. Because at the end of the day, you'll never ever hear me say that Odysseys are shit, because I've never listened to a shit pair of Odysseys yet. My thing about Odysseys have always been, in terms of the LCDX, I've always felt that they're maybe a little bit expensive in compared to something like Hyphem and Sindaras, that run them very, very close. But I know when you get into the higher upper echelons of like the MX4s and stuff like that, you are getting, a higher quality sound in the same way that you get that, the HE 1000 SE sound is fucking nobody. I've never heard any other headphone, and don't know anybody else that's heard another headphone sound like that. And same with the Ananda Nanos just now.
I'll tell you what, we may have missed out, but I didn't see that many sets of headphones there. Yeah, they were the Neumann ones. Austrian Audio, I think, had theirs there, although I only seem to remember seeing microphones. There weren't many headphone brands there, which is a shame. So hopefully Odyssey are considering hosting a stall there next year. I vaguely remember
Hyphen definitely
4 pints.
should, because like the Hyphen reps from Stirling, he's genuinely 45 minutes up the road from me. Mark, I don't think Mark watches this podcast, but Mark, if you're watching, get your arse down to London next year, because I'll guarantee you, if Hyphen, especially the fucking hype I've put up with Hyphen, if you were to get like the HE 1000 SEs, the Ananda Nanos, the Aria Stealth and stuff like that, if they were to get like in the Sindaras, I'll guarantee you they would sell a shit ton. They would sell a shit ton. Or even,
here's an idea, why don't you be the rep for them, and then they can pay for your train fare, and everyone wins, right?
Right, everybody come in, listen to the best headphones I've ever heard.
Then I don't have to hang around with you all fucking day.
You loved it. Didn't start. You loved it. But yeah, it was even present day production on the Sunday was great, because again I got to chat to Mark about Atmos, because I know Mark loves to speak about Atmos, because I know he's super, super passionate about it. So I listened to their setup first and was like, yeah, super seamless. It's so annoying because I had to spend so long to get my speakers to sound that kind of seamless way where you can't really tell like where like that's coming out of speakers, you know what I mean? Where theirs is just so seamless. It's just like the transitions are just unbelievably seamless. However, I don't know, I actually still prefer my Atmos room. The mums sound better than the Kali LPH. There's no denying it. I'm not an idiot. But I quite like how I've got my Atmos set up, because it's a circular ITU, so it's closer to you than any other really Atmos setup, because they're all normally, can't remember, the equidistant, I think. So there's always like further back. So they had theirs further back. And because I'm used to having such a close, intimate Atmos sound, I didn't get that from any Atmos setup I was in. My concern is now that the circular ITU may not translate. But again, I've got Apple Music, so I can easily, so I know like how records done on Atmos should translate, because I'm listening to them in that room. So I still prefer my setup, but I prefer the speakers, if that makes any sense. I would like I would get a better experience doing Atmos in my room with the mums, but I prefer the circular ITU. It's 1 meter, so everything's 1 meter equidistant around you.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be in your room, would it? Because the mums are massive.
No, my room's still big enough. It's still, remember, I've got LP8s in there, so I'd still be able to take them. But yeah, it was great. It was, again, and I really appreciate Mark and James for taking the time, because they're busy people. And yeah, it was great to just chat to them, and it was great for, I think, Ed to listen to Atmos in another really, really, really high quality setup. Their room's amazing, and it's super tall as well. And I loved it because I was finally able to show Ed what I've been talking about. I don't think he was as overwhelmed as what I am when I do it. Like, I took Supersonic and I was like, told you, look, there's Noel in the sides. Look, there's Supersonic. There's the solo. There's the riff. And I was taking apart certain songs and I was like, look, There's Stevie Nicks' vocal in the front isolated. There's that isolated. You've never heard that before. You've never heard that before.
Yeah, it was quite a nice experience to hear those things in isolation.
Yeah.
And actually to hear how relatively clean some of the Oasis picked
Guitars
guitar
are,
parts
I know.
were, where actually on the record they sound quite distorted with the rest of it. But I'm on the fence still with Atmos. I love the concept. But listening to some of those tracks, they lose the punch when the chorus kicks in. And there was one track with a guitar solo. I was like, where's the solo gone? Because someone's placed it up on a ceiling somewhere. And because you've not got that cohesive wall of every instrument coming at you from two sound sources, it's spread out over 12 or 16 or whatever they go for. It loses its impact for me. And I don't like that being a drummer because I'm all about impact.
That's what I don't get in my Atmos room. I think because I've got them so close to me, because it's a 1 meter circular ITU. No, it's not 1 meter. I think it's 1.1 because I wanted it to try and be as far as possible.
That would make sense. Now, maybe it's just, I'm just there thinking, well, hang on, maybe it just needs a little bit more automation to create that punch. Or it's a case of somehow manipulating the mix so that the peak transient of that first hit of a chorus comes out of every speaker rather than like one there, one over there, one up there, and one behind you. It comes out of every speaker somehow and hits you in a way that stereo hits you out of two speakers. Just the impact disappears on a lot of stuff for me, and that doesn't really sit well.
Yeah, see, I know what, you now need to hear Atmos on my room, because I would be interested to hear your opinion, because everything, it's a smaller room and it's a smaller ITU, the rears are closer to you, the heights are closer to you, and the sub is a lot closer to you because it's in the corner. So in my room, it's very, like the low end's very big and expansive, and I don't know, I just feel that everything kind of maintains its dynamics, and that's what I struggled with. Like I played a Celine Dion track that in my room, oh my God, I remember I had I can't remember, I think I had my mother-in-law in, and she was like, oh, she sounds like a pigeon. Oh, this is great. Oh my, I've never heard Celine Dion like this. Oh my, this is the best I've heard. And she was like blown away by it. But honestly, I play that Celine Dion track in that room. People are like, oh my God, it's swimming there and the rears are closer to you, and it never loses the punch because everything's so close to you. Where when I
can see how the size would make a difference, because I remember hearing the Neumann room Andrew Shept talked in at NAMM, and it was too big.
It was
it was like being at a stadium gig. Things were miles behind. It's like, well, is that the mix or is that next door stereo? Like,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
It wasn't cohesive. So I can imagine how, in the first for everything, the smaller the better.
Easy. But yeah, I have to say that because there is people that have always wanted to get my opinion on the mums, I would say that mid-range is it's super, super detailed, and it's super detailed but clean as well. It's not like distorted mid-range, it's very clean. And the tweeter with the mid-range, they just sound like one, but they still sound like a three-way, because the top end's still detailed, but it's not like detailed like a PSI, but it's just so well correlated. The only thing that I was a little bit unsure about was the low end. I was maybe wanting a bit more low end girth from the mums, but I think they're probably, for me, more as a mid-range speaker. That's where the magic of the mums is in that mid-range. It's super, super detailed. But again, maybe it's just because I'm a bit of a bass fiend and I do like to have big, low bass. And
I think the mum tends deliver better in the low end than the eights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my feeling is there seems to be a peak note in the speaker.
Almost like the bass is too tight. I think that's what we thought, eh?
Yeah. It's almost really tight in one area, and then it
doesn't bloom out, does it? It's like tight.
Doesn't engulf you.
Yes, that's probably the best term.
Like a PMC would.
Yeah, but Andrish made a very good point, and he was like, yeah, but they've made these speakers because Mark made speakers. He's like, I want to make my perfect speaker. So that's what Mark loves, and he's sharing that sound with everybody. But what's great about the mums is that obviously there's a modular system. You could take things out and change drivers and stuff, can you? That's the whole point of the system. So you can change out things, which is great. And again, they've got the DSP in there as well. So I was very impressed with them. I would have been great to hear them at Gearfest because they were constantly busy. Every time I went there, somebody was in the room. So it would have been great to hear it in a shitty room and then hear it in their room, and I could have been able to correlate the two. But yeah, great speakers. If you're wanting, for me, the mid-range and top end is the best that I heard all weekend. The high end was for me what I want to hear. That's how I want to hear my high end. Ed likes to hear the detail of the PSIs, but I kind of feel like I can tell I'm listening to a three-way. I can tell that high end's coming out of a different speaker. That's what I love about all this, is that I love speaking about all this stuff. I love speaking about the nuances, and I love hearing other people's takes on it. But see, when you actually meet people in person, here's a tip for all you internet bashers. Get out of the fucking house and go to something like Gearfest and speak to people. Have an open mind and be... and it's okay for people to disagree with you. All you Neumann bashers. Yes, I know you think that those speakers are the best speakers in the fucking world, right? If they work for you, great. But if they don't work for somebody else, then it doesn't make them any less of a fucking mixer. And that's what I found. When I meet these people and you meet them in person, there's no arseholeness. There's no egotistical fucking bollocks going on. It's just like, again, when Matteo came across, he's like, fucking, I love the keys. You didn't have anybody doing a fucking gear slots being like, oh my God, you fucking love the keys. What an idiot. Fuck off, not a real mixer. Fuck off. We were just like, cool, man. And we were more intrigued about what it was that Matteo loved about the sound. That's how audio should be. We should be intrigued.
Speaking of gear space, you made a couple of friends, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't believe it. I forgot that. We met people that worked for Gearspace, and like I did not want to have this conversation. As soon as Ed was like, oh yeah, Paul, guys work at Gearspace.
I met them first, and I knew Paul wouldn't want to be introduced, so what did I do?
And of course he did, prick. But no, they were lovely, to be fair. They really were. And look, I can tell that they know, of course they know how gear slots works, right? I'm going to call it gear slots until the attitude changes. That could be a great place, a really, really great place. And I could tell they wanted to make changes, and they want to make it a less arrogant and less fucking drop a bomb Nasake fucking kind of place, and full of like confirmation bias and negativity and nasty toxic. That's just horrible. Every time I hear fucking Gearspace, I'm like, Paul, somebody speaking about you in a Fred and Gearspace. I'm like, didn't even mention it to us. So yeah, they've got a long way to go, because after the whole Mixed thing, apparently it got super, super nasty about me, and I told them that, and I was like, look, just to let you know, like, it gets super, super nasty, and you cut like any negativity in a review just gets absolutely blasted. By the way, just before I forget, Ed, because I will forget, Emra sent me a video, and the headphone show released a video, I think it was today or yesterday. A manufacturer is trying to sue the headphone show for a video that they released, I think, in 2021, because it was a negative review. They are actually, like, the CEO of, like, he never does videos, but the CEO of the headphone show on YouTube had to come out and make a video and be like, this is fucking not on. Like, genuinely, they are being sued for a negative review. Like, what? This is the things that I hate about the industry. But see, when you go to Gearfest, I was in the room with the PSIs, and I was like, nah, don't know.
Well, hang on. There's potentially quite a lot to unpack there, because that doesn't sound like the full story. You can't sue someone for having an opinion. Otherwise, the internet wouldn't exist. You can sue someone for slander, which is intentionally misrepresenting a brand. For example, blatantly changing what are facts about a person or a company or a product. That's what they're probably getting sued over if something has been significantly misrepresented beyond the state of an opinion. But he won't be getting sued even in America, you can't sue someone for having an opinion.
But again, I watched the first 5 minutes of it, and I was like, holy shit, I need to remember it. So I'll send you it, Ed. And know what, we actually might do a video on it.
I mean, if they do, you're fucked.
Like, fuck off. Like, could you imagine the damage to somebody's brand if they tried to sue me? They would be over. Nobody would buy anything from that brand again. They'd be like, what, you're genuinely to sue Paul Third, the one guy that we fucking trust? Yeah, but if it's a good product,
they would, because people would forget, and ultimately people wouldn't care. They'd be like, cool, fine.
That makes
I'm
me
going to use
sad.
Amazon anyway.
That makes me sad to think the internet wouldn't care. All my fans, all my loyal subscribers, they'd just be like, "Oh yeah, it's a bit shit, innit? Paul lost his arse, but he did save me £100." And on that bombshell, well, I'm done. But leave it there. Is there anything you want to say, Ed, or we'll leave it there on that bombshell?
Oh, the only other things that stood out for me at Gearfest, Audioscape gear. Really impressed by that. However, I can't afford any, but I did come into the studio today and think, right, what don't I use on a regular basis that I might be able to sell to buy some Audioscape gear with? Particularly the LA2A and the D-Comp were delightful, and the Pultec sounded very creamy. And the other thing was the MUC-DSP system that
APB,
Dale
yeah.
showed us. Now, I'd heard this at NAMM, but even with closed-back headphones, NAMM is so noisy, you can't really get an idea of the subtleties of these things. But we heard it through the Ex Machinas at Gearfest, and it's impressive. The whole system is impressive, and it requires no I/O. It's just 16 channels of analog processing done via Thunderbolt, which is remarkable. So there's no need for any kind of flock audio patch. So hopefully I'm going to get a copy of one of those as well to try and hang it in the studio. That'll be delightful. Other than that, I went away happy with my speaker purchases with the PSIs and the Amphions. I think, as you said, there is no perfect speaker.
No, it doesn't exist.
There are perfect bits of speakers. I agree. Present day production have got the mid-range and the top end to an incredible place. If it had PMC low end, I'd fucking hell, it'd be the best speaker
That
out
would
there.
be end game
But then
changer.
I'd say that about the PSIs. If they had PMC low end,
Yeah.
you'd be winning. So there is no perfect speaker out there, but it is what suits you. And I think we all need to be mindful of that when somebody has something that isn't what we use, doesn't make them a worse engineer or a worse person or having worse ears, etc. So like anything, just be kind to one another,
Yeah.
please.
I know.
On that bombshell, we will be back next week talking about mid-range. Mum is in the mid-range. Magic in the mid-range.
Yes. End it.
been
You're
emotional.
killing me. End it. Bye-bye, everybody. I'll end it. Fucking hell. Can't even finish a sentence. Bye-bye.